Welcome to space, people. Welcome to the weather in space. Here's the space weather. We're looking at the sun at 193 angstroms. We got this very long coronal hole pretty much facing straight at Earth right now. It's the main feature going on. We also missed a coronal mass ejection yesterday, which is not Earth-facing, by the way. And we will show you that momentarily. Let's look at more views. Alright, so here's the view in 171 angstroms. And there you can see that filament which goes flying off of the northwestern limb of the sun there. We'll look at it in 304 angstroms. We don't catch everything every time, folks. Sometimes we miss something. Here's a great image of it in 304 angstroms. Keep your eye on this area. And there it goes. And here are the magnetic field lines at 335 angstroms. And here's an image on the LASCO C2. We stayed zoomed all the way out, so you can see the time and date snaps. Here comes that coronal mass ejection yesterday. Seems like it's taken forever here. Anytime you're ready. I don't know why it's running so slow, folks. Anyway, you'll get a nice view. There is a coronal mass ejection coming out of the western limb of the sun. Clearly not Earth-facing. Moving on to the real-time solar wind here. We see the BTBZ. The BZ is actually dropping down there on the top pane. One thing to note is that extreme negative BZ, which is the red line in the top pane there, is associated with earthquake risk. We don't see a constant connection or anything with that coronal hole, but we do see some connections. There's one, there's one. That's one there, it looks like. We got an extremely low solar wind at 4.07 protons per cubic centimeter, and the solar wind speed all the way down to 323 kilometers per second. So a very low, weak solar wind. Next we'll go to spaceweathernews.com. We see the X-ray flux is quite flatlined there. No significant flares. Magnetometer still looking smooth. No expected abnormalities in that. And the KP has been at either 1 or 0 for the last 3 days, raising the risk of human cosmic ray alert. Human health cosmic ray alert, that is. And the electron flux is kind of in a normal operating range, it looks like there. No charging hazards. We see the F2 layer looking quite discharged as we would expect with the solar activity as low as it is. Auroras, there's the forecast for those. Moving on to the Gong 2. This data 1 hour 37 minutes old. We see a fairly smooth environment there as far as the Earth's magnetic connection to the sun. And we do see some big fluctuations there in the north solar polar field as it's reaching stereo A, which by the way is this. And for those of you who are not regular viewers, over here we have stereo B. 3 months behind the Earth, orbiting the sun. Next, how about some Magnetosphere movies? Here's the velocity.
Actually, 2 dolls. There's one that feels very rubbery, and when you shake it, it kind of jiggles a little bit. There's also an animatronic.
I apologize for that interruption. Here's the density. Doing some multitasking here, people. And lastly, here's the pressure, which is exactly what you'd expect to see with such a weak solar wind. Let that play through. And move on to geospace magnetic perturbations on the ground. First, we'll look at the ground perturbations at the poles here. Keep in mind, this is change delta B, in other words, changes in the B field, which is the field that goes through the planet. Again, this is not a raw measurement. This is representing a change in the B field. Here it is from a global perspective. And we see what we've been seeing regarding the South Pole's migration toward India and the North Canadian Pole migrating toward Hawaii. Nothing too extraordinary going on there. Moving on. And let's move up a few atmospheric layers here to the total electron content. Give you an idea of how that looks. Also hit the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard, where we will check out the... Actually, let's look at the LASCO C3 and get another view of that coronal mass ejection. I'll let that play through again for you. See like a bubble-like formation coming out there. And here's the Enlil prediction here. Give you an idea of when the next solar wind stream's coming in. Not expecting a big increase in velocity until the 27th. And the 2 days prior to that, we expect a slow ramping up of the plasma density, as you can see in the top graph. We'll leave links to all those sites and this one also. VolcanoDiscovery.com. Today's volcano list includes Karimsky, producing a 10,000-foot ash plume, Shivaluch, 13,000-foot ash plume, Mount Ibu, which is back to erupting, producing an 8,000-foot ash plume, Tucona, a 6,000-foot ash plume, new emissions from Fuego, intermittent emissions from Revenador, Sabancaya, not identifiable, Planchon Peteroa, 13,000-foot ash plume. Moving on to earthquakes. At quakes.globalincidentmap.com, the first thing we would do is draw this warning area. We are still having a massive drought of 6 and 7 magnitude earthquakes. So these areas that I'm highlighting in purple are the areas where you want to be on watch. Because it's not a question of if a magnitude 6 or 7 earthquake is going to happen. It's a matter of when. So if you're in those areas, please have a plan. Going back 11 hours, we see one of the larger quakes we've seen in California for quite a while there, off the coast of Petrolia, a 4.1. Usually not doing too much reporting on U.S. earthquakes, but when they get into the 4 magnitude, we sure do. 4.5 in El Salvador. There's a location on that. Kind of right at the northern portion of the South American warning area there. You got a 4.6 in China. Give you the location of that one. I said 4.6, right? Okay, we got a 5.0 in New Guinea. Papua New Guinea, that is. Excuse me. Another 4.9 in China. So no uptick in earthquakes. So stay on watch, folks. That coronal hole's magnetic connection and deep earthquakes portend larger earthquakes at the surface. Head to spaceweather.com. They actually have an article about that CME we were just looking at. We're just here for the 10.7 centimeter radio flux, which is still at 71. So no reduction there despite the weak solar wind. At theplanetstoday.com, you too can animate the solar system. Here's the current situation. Let's advance it 1 week. And there's where the planets will be 7 days from now. We'll leave links to this site also. It's got a whole list of cosmic ray stations. Feel free to explore it. First, we'll look at Athens. There's the data from that. Next, Mexico City. Here's Moscow, calming down a little bit from the extremely high levels that were received on 2 days ago. Actually, it looks like they're a little behind there. Make that for 4 days ago. Here's Oulu, Finland. And next we've got DOMC, Antarctica. And here's DOMB, Antarctica. Let's move out a little farther away here, looking at the transient analysis for Sagittarius A star, the Milky Way galactic core. Here's the measured transients by the Burst Alert Telescope. We will leave links. Nothing too extravagant going on at Sagittarius A star from a radio perspective. Next, we'll look at Cygnus A, otherwise known as 3C405.0, a terrible name for Cygnus A, the second strongest radio source in the entire sky, which is 700 million light years away, by the way. Nothing too extravagant going on there either. Next, we'll look at one of my favorites, Cygnus X3. Oh yeah. Otherwise known as Deneb, the tail of the swan. The part of the sky that people were building pyramids and Göbekli Tepe to be facing. Cygnus X3. At the other end of the precessional cycle, it's your north celestial pole. This thing is interesting because when we see this drop down to very low levels, that's what happens before we get a spike, as you can see on this pane with the more historic data. So we are awaiting some big transients from X3. We see just a couple days ago a very low transient. So getting ready for that to kick back up. One of the most reliable cosmic ray sources in the sky, Cygnus X3. And while Cygnus X3 is located inside the Milky Way galaxy, let's go a little farther from home to zooniverse.org to look at the Galaxy Zoo project, one of the largest citizen science projects in the world. Set yourself up a login, come over here to zooniverse.org, and classify a galaxy like this. Pretty odd galaxy here. It looks like it has a weak bar. We're going to say it has features. Is it an edge on disk? Well, certainly not. Is there a bar? Yeah, there's a bar. We're going to say weak bar. Is there any sign of a spiral arm pattern? What do you think, folks? I'm going to say no. Is there a bulge? Dominant. No, we'll say a large bulge. Is it merging or disturbed? I'm going to say minor disturbance. And do we have irregular features? Well, we sure do. Alright, so I see some overlap. I might be looking at a polar jet here, but I can't say for sure. It's probably just something in the foreground. And keep in mind when you do these analyses, you're only looking at the object in the center. So, let's see. What do we have here? There's some features. We're going to say irregular. Dust lane and overlap. And that's it. There you go. One galaxy classified. Who will be next? This one's pretty funky looking too, by the way. It's a great view here. And is that a jet? Not exactly sure. So head to zooniverse.org and classify this galaxy, people. Just wanted to show you the water vapor map here on AccuWeather.com. We've got a high wind advisory here in Pennsylvania. I'm located in eastern PA here. Got a high wind advisory all day till 6 p.m. So, you know, be on the alert for things that happen on windy days, like power outages, trees down across the road, all that sort of stuff. It's not super cold right now where I'm located, and so that's going to, you know, when trees are frozen into the ground, they have a harder time falling over. Let's just put it that way. Next, we're on SciTech Daily. Great images of Jupiter by the Juno mission. We'll leave links to the article. Check out the storms. It was only about 8,000 miles up, I think, when it took these. So have yourself a read at scitechdaily.com. Next, you got to pay up for having your brain enhanced through having your brain rotted. How do you do that? Well, you go to random-eyes.com and you find this big blue button, which looks like a giant blue pill, and then you press it, and then it picks a random website, and then you go, what am I doing with my life? Here we go. RainyMod.com helps you to focus, relax, and sleep. Oh, RainyMood.com. Yeah, way to start out with thunder. Nice. Reminds me of the Thunderbolts project. Well done. Well done. I think it's brilliant. RainyMood.com. We'll leave links. And let's take a look at the sun in 94 angstroms. What do you say? We'd like to take a moment to thank our donors for their incredible generosity. We'd like to thank our subscribers for leaving such great comments. The overwhelming positivity and encouragement is quite nice. We greatly appreciate it. We'll be doing it all again tomorrow. Have a delightful day out there, folks. Remember, when you understand the sun, don't drink. And if you drink, understand the sun anyway. Just don't drive.